Today I'm in London for one of the last rehearsals on my new ballet score, My Sister, the Serial Killer, which I'm really excited about. Ballet Black have allowed me in to film some of the rehearsals, so you're going to be able to see exactly how my new score is looking and sounding with the choreography today. It's going to be in the dance studio, but I'm also going to be going back to the music studio. I'll be showing you exactly how I've been creative over the last few months, breaking down how I created this 40-minute score, the whole kind of collaborative process, and yeah, basically everything that it took to get to where we are. So join me as we go into the dance studio and see how My Sister, the Serial Killer, is looking and sounding. So welcome to the world of My Sister, the Serial Killer, this new ballet. And welcome to my studio. I'm going to show you how I kind of created bits of this track and kind of just a general kind of look into kind of the collaborative process and kind of see it from this side now that it's all being danced to. So this is the opening number. And this is actually the first track that I wrote for the whole project. It starts off really simply with just a very simple piano melody here. And that is essentially the main kind of theme which finds its way into the whole score, the whole 40-minute piece. When I'm starting a big project like this, I always like to make my material in the opening really clear and really obvious so that listeners have something to kind of latch onto as they go through and listen to it. But anyway, that's essentially how the work begins, is this really simple piano melody. And the score is very digital and very electronic, which is actually quite unusual for me. Normally I write much more acoustic kind of music, but this has been really fun to write something kind of a lot darker. And basically the whole, I don't want to give away too much about the plot. That's not what this is about today. You should come and see the ballet instead if you want to see what happens in the plot. But there's a lot of murder and a lot of death and a lot of darkness. And what the piano is doing is it's kind of the only sort of acoustic natural sounding instrument in the whole score. And what I want to do with it is it kind of represents kind of the purity or the innocence of the characters, and then the digital darkness that kind of overtakes them is sort of, you know, the death and the murder. So the whole score, the whole 40 minutes is really this piano being sort of subsumed and sort of taken over and disguised and broken and kind of damaged by the digital aggression that's around it. And that's really the kind of sound world of the whole kind of score. And I want to make that really clear in the beginning. So the piano is the first kind of identifiable feature of the score. The second feature, which I bring in here, is this what I've labelled as a reverse glitch. I'm just going to open up the automation. So you can see what's going on. So this is an Omnisphere patch with Soundtoys Tremolator, Pitch Shift, Soundtoys Decapitator, and Punishment on it. So that's the kind of processing that's on the go, alongside modulation, expression, all the other things. And this is a really identifiable gesture. You'll see that it actually comes back 4 times in just the opening. And this is something which I want to be another kind of really recognizable feature of the score. And this is the complete opposite to the piano. It's purely digital. It's really aggressive. It's very glitchy. I'll let you hear it now. So if I open up Punishment, you can see the kind of automation that I'm doing. So Punishment is really good for making sounds go further away and closer in the kind of stereo image. I think it uses some sort of early reflection to kind of do that, and left and right as well. You can automate it really easily. So this sound, you can see, is sort of gets close and then goes away and then comes really close to kind of your face, I sort of imagine. So that's the kind of automation that I'm doing here. And then it kind of rushes away at the very end as well. So that's the kind of level of detail I'm doing for these really identifiable sounds. And this is again sort of bringing more of this idea of the piano versus digital, of kind of opposites being very prevalent in this ballet and in this score. So we kind of reach a climax here, and then okay, so we've got more. It begins to drive forwards a little bit. I'm using Crow Hill Company Concussion Drums. So I really wanted it to just kind of feel like it's pushing forwards, and then later on we have some hi-hats. And these hi-hats I'm using quite a lot on it. So Tremolator, Saturn for saturation. Really, that's a lot of saturation. Oh no, I've just cut out lots of the lows. And then Panman, which is an amazing plugin from Sound Toys to move it around in the stereo field to give it a bit of life. So the piano chords that you're hearing here are like the sort of seconds theme, as it were. And they find their way into the rest of the score as well. And actually, after this kind of climax here, they find their way into this really weird synth part. So that's something really granular. If I play the piano again, then if I play the synths alone, hopefully you can hear that that is the same chord, but I'm completely disguising it and breaking it and disturbing it and turning it on its head and making it really electronic. And this is really to show that the darkness is coming. I mixed this all in this one file because there's so much automation and panning left and right is so important, and reverbs are baked into the sound. I just found it easier and much more efficient to actually mix it all in this. All I did was I just froze the tracks so that I would get kind of regular round robins and everything like that. And then I mixed it here. I'm going to carry on with the next part of this score, which is a completely different part, and it's where basically the main character, the main murderer, meets her next victim. And in this part, I'm trying to really show that things are not quite right, that they're kind of flirting with each other. They're sort of interested in each other. But I'm trying to sort of tell the audience that her intentions are not as you may think they are. So a completely different cue to the one which you saw in the opening. Actually, I'll tell you a little bit about the process of this. This one I actually struggled to kind of get right for the first time. This is where we go to the hospital where the main characters kind of work, and it has to be light, and often my music is just far too dark, and it really took Cassa, who's the choreographer, to be like, I really need some contrast here, Tom. I really need something light and actually a bit more carefree. So we came up with this idea. So really minimalist, really simple, really kind of uplifting, no darkness in it. I really had to convince myself that this is what this piece needed. So this is all part of the process, and this is the great thing about working with a choreographer or a director, is they are invariably always correct, and their perspective is always right, and that's something which I'm continuing to learn. Anyway, the part that I showed you with the dance is the first time where Ayula, who's the murderer, meets her kind of next target, basically. And what I'm doing here with with the kind of orchestration and the harmony here, is I've got the first introduction of these string chords, which begin to kind of they're very chromatic, which begin to kind of pick away and sort of maybe show that things aren't quite right. So I'll just play this part again. That's quite a dissonant chord, really. And what we have in this this high piano up here is the original melody. So again, I'm always just referencing back to that original theme as a way of kind of making everything kind of sound cohesive and coherent, hopefully. So what I'm doing also, I've called this main piano verb detunes, which means it's a main piano with a reverb, but also I'm detuning it. As it goes on, it begins to go down in pitch. So when we hear the two pianos together, they will kind of sound wrong together. So it's really subtle, but it should hopefully again kind of reinforce that idea orally that something's not quite right, that to be kind of prepared for things not to be kind of as you expect them to be. So with the kind of the chords here, I'm using Cinematic Studio strings, just an ensemble patch, just their longs, and then I've added some 10 seconds of reverb. My goodness, that's rather excessive, but I don't think it sounds too bad. You tell me in the comments if you think it sounds bad. It sounds okay. Kind of introducing some darkness, and it's just as well I'm introducing darkness because the next cue is the most dark of them all, and this was probably the most fun one I had to write, and it's the nightmare scene. And this is where Coredi, who's one of the main characters, who I don't want to give away the plot too much, but she spends a lot of time with dead bodies. That's all I'm going to say. And these dead bodies are now haunting her, basically. And this is such a fun scene to write. And now that I've seen it with costume and in the rehearsal just now, it's just all coming to life and it's really exciting. So this is part of the nightmare scene that I'm going to talk you through. Again, a completely different score back to this kind of digital, aggressive sort of world that we had in Q1. There's a little flavour of the nightmare, and as I said, this was unbelievably fun to write. I'm using quite a lot of Omnisphere throughout this. So a really important part of this work is an Omnisphere patch that I'm using, Bark cello staccato movement, which I've made changes to, and then I've done quite a lot of processing, so decapitator, pan man to move it around quite a lot. So it's really important that it has that energy, that movement from left to right. Percussion is really important in this. So let's just kind of have a look at what percussion I'm using here. I'm using quite a few samples from Splice, which are really great. I'm using, actually, this is an Abbey Road patch. They're Abbey Road's low percussion. And this is the bass drum with the root on the rim, which is actually a really great sound. A sample low kick, some metals from East West. Again, I'm putting some Echo Boy on it to just put it in a slightly different space. Some anvils. That's just a sample as well. Cruels, again, just a sample. And you notice that I'm panning things quite a lot, so it's really kind of trying to give quite a wide stereo image with the percussion. Ratchets from Concussion. And then the low drum from Concussion as well. Which one's this one called? No Such Thing as Excessive. Perfect for this track. So the percussion on their own just kind of give it its energy, really. Then towards the end it becomes a bit more aggressive. And again with some kind of glitch hi-hats and all that kind of stuff. But this was a really fun one to write. Very, very aggressive and very angular, and some deliberately kind of horrible and sort of dirty sounds in it, which was really fun to kind of create. I mean, if we just look at this, is called Distorted Lead Angry. So again, that's a sound which keeps on coming back. We've got these detuned roar, is what I've called it, but let's see if it's a roar or not. A Brahms, really, not a roar. So we arrive at this big climax here, and then I'm wanted to really leave us in somewhere quite uncomfortable, and that's what I've done, I think, in this final section here. We've just got some really long, very granular, very distorted, very horrible kind of drones, I guess, which come after this big arrival here. And I really wanted it to feel like uncomfortable, because we've just had sort of 3 minutes worth of pretty heavy music. 3 minutes 20 of pretty heavy music, and I didn't want people to sort of relax after it. I still wanted there to be a sense of something bad could still happen. The character on the stage is still, kind of coming out the nightmare and thinking, oh my goodness, what is happening? There's all these monsters in my room, or were they really there? Or, you're kind of questioning it, I suppose. So here's just a bit of the climax and then what comes after. So I really wanted to sort of, that's got a huge tail on it. I really wanted that to sound like it was kind of like I'm suspending reality a bit longer. I'm sort of in that sort of space between like sleep and nightmare, and really just making it deliberately uncomfortable. I'm using a lot of detuning throughout this whole score, but particularly here, so that nothing really kind of fits and nothing quite kind of sounds right. And that's a big feature of this piece. So next up we have a completely different cue, again, totally different to what you've heard so far. Wanting to kind of give you a rough idea of kind of the variety of things I've had to write in this score. As always, if there's any questions that you have, please let me know down below. And also, while you're there, give us a little like and a subscribe. That would be greatly appreciated. The next one is where Taddy, the guy who is kind of involved with the murderer, is nervously kind of checking his phone and is kind of just, things are not quite right. He knows things aren't quite right, basically. And the score needs to kind of reflect that. So here's Taddy's nervous solo. Okay, so again, that gives you a kind of a flavour of this this nervous solo. This is back to a much more simple, kind of cleaner sort of sound, and really kind of giving a bit of contrast to the kind of electronic aggression that we've had around. Now, that's not to say I'm not using some electronics. We've got these three kind of arpeggiated organs, which are sort of filling the sound around the piano a bit. And these longs as well. So again, these are all just different Omnisphere patches. I'm using Panagement to put it in different places, and then they've got arpeggiators on them as well, and then these kind of detuned sort of synths as well, just to give a sense of things are still not quite as they should be. Things are not quite right. Things are not happy. Another thing which I did here is in all the tracks up till now, pretty much, certainly in the aggressive ones, they have a lot of bass. But here in this cue, there's two instances of bass. There's two notes. That's an important harmonic moment. And I really wanted this to kind of have a real textural change to what is around it. And I think actually just taking away bass and making things a bit lighter and less oppressive is a really good thing to try and do. I think I actually had bass the whole way through, and then I kind of cut it out when I sort of was refining the work a little bit. So again, this is a totally different kind of track, much more simple in terms of this kind of elements. We've got the same kind of main piano, some concussion instruments, some clicks, and that's actually me clicking as well. That's just the quiet kind of groove behind it. You can hear Timeless doing its thing as well, which I quite like on its own actually. And yeah, the strings kind of come in. It becomes a bit more dissonant round about here. We add this kind of chromatic piano. But essentially it just kind of does one thing. It just has a piano kind of melody. It goes through some different chords. It becomes a bit more aggressive, but then it ends the way it started, with the same kind of theme. Listening to it again, I think I could have added a little bit more space to the piano. It's quite constant the whole way through. It doesn't have much lightness to it, and it would have had perhaps more interest. I've taken some stuff away, but hey, too late. It's all been mastered now, and it's all been submitted, so it's too late to change anything. So the last one I'm going to show you today is, again, a completely different track to all the other ones that you've heard. So this is the fight scene between Corredi and Tade. So there you go. That gives you a little flavour of the kind of the aggressive and single-minded sort of nature of this track, and it is fairly simple in what it's doing. If we look at the piano on its own, it's just an additive process. It starts really simple, and I just add more layers to it, and then later on it kind of develops to. But this da da is always constant, and then I just add more pianos to it. and the pianos are panned more left and right. So eventually we have a cacophony of pianos, probably too much piano. But that initial theme is still there. Some of the craziest music I've written, but most fun to play it in. So we've kind of got a drum kit on the go here, kind of unashamedly very percussive, very aggressive, very kind of rocky sort of sound. Which I don't mind. I quite like that, to be fair, and it kind of really builds up to the climax here and helps drive everything on. The other element that we have that's really important is this bass part from which I'm using a Trillian patch for, and it's just an upright bass patch. And the whole point of this is that the piano and the bass really never lock in together. They never really sound connected, and that's kind of the point that that we're having an argument here. We're having a fight. The two sides are never quite seeing eye to eye. In fact, they never see eye to eye on this, and that's why the bass and the piano really don't fit together at all. So they fit and they don't fit, and that's kind of, I think, the sort of the magic of this kind of combination of two lines which are really kind of opposing each other. Actually, the energy that gives kind of makes this part kind of work. I think fairly well. This was really, I was really satisfied with how this sounded in the end. So I'll tell you a little bit about how the kind of collaborative process worked here. I started off, first of all, writing these 3 tracks at the bottom here, in fact 4 tracks maybe, as a way of sort of writing little vignettes and little kind of sketches of what the sound of the piece might be. So for example, if I play you a little bit of this is Corelli's theme. I've not actually heard that for months, since July, and actually none of that made it in. But it kind of was part of the process, really important part of the process of sort of working out what the sound might be, what the atmosphere might be, before actually starting writing the opening. So you can see I didn't actually finish the opening until kind of August, when I kind of got going with it. So there was quite a lot of sort of contemplating and sketching and really kind of thinking what this 40-minute piece was going to be, and kind of sending sketches to Cassa and sort of seeing, how do you think about this kind of world? What do you think about this sort of atmosphere? Is this something I should explore more? And that was really how the kind of collaborative process began. And then, so I kind of wrote the first, I think, 2 or 3 numbers, and then Cassa was in the studio with the dancers and she choreographed it, pretty much the whole ballet, a lot of it to guide tracks, which was really, really fun, because it meant that I could then kind of score to film, which was fantastic. So I'm not going to show you, because it's not fair, this is a really old rehearsal. I won't show you any of this because it's just a rehearsal. But this was the sort of footage, or an example of the footage that I was getting from Cassa almost daily, of her creating this ballet to these guide tracks. And then what I would do is I would import this into Logic and then kind of score it the same way I would film. Basically working out hit points, working out exactly where it should go, and really also trying to ignore, in many cases, what the guide track was doing, because the guide track sometimes was pretty good, but just actually not quite right, and maybe was actually basically just not completely the right thing. So for a lot of these numbers, I was actually scoring to a film of the dancers dancing to other guide tracks. And then obviously when they hear my new score, they would then kind of have new ideas about how it should be danced to, and then there'd be kind of quite a lot of back and forth. But that's how this kind of process worked, and for me that was really fascinating, and it was so great actually for me to see the visuals. That really helped me out a lot to be able to actually just kind of recognize what is happening and to see the tempos the dancers are dancing at. And it answered a lot of questions for me. It really helped. And actually to see the kind of structure of that part of the score really helped. So I would totally do it that way again. To be getting kind of videos going backwards and forwards, it was really great, and I had to do a lot of very kind of quick turnaround stuff. You know, the rehearsal would be at midday, and then they'd do a little bit, and I need to tweak within an hour and send it back to them for their 3:00 rehearsal, so that we had the best kind of use of time, and that was a really great kind of thing to be able to work on it again. But so that's a little insight into the collaborative process and how kind of scoring this sort of worked. A lot of back and forth, a lot of WhatsApps, and a lot of voice notes as well were sent between Cassa and me. So that's the end of the rehearsal with Ballet Black. Just an amazing experience. I'm really proud of this work, I have to say. It's been absolutely incredible. Really, really enjoyed it. And it's just been an amazing collaborative process. So the next step is tech rehearsal at Hackney Empire, and then the performance, and then the tour. It's doing many venues throughout the UK, so if you are in the UK, please consider getting a ticket. It's very entertaining, even if I say so myself. So I hope you enjoyed this little look at the creation of this ballet, and please do give us a little like, subscribe, consider becoming a member. More about that later on. Otherwise, I'm getting on a train back up north. See you in the next one. Thanks for coming along. Cheers.